sahdu. We'll talk about Alan Watts, sahdu Alan Watts. I have a new hat, it's my birthday hat. Sahdu Alan basically talks about existence as either an artifact or as drama. And one is looking at our Christian orientation explanation of existence. The other one is looking at the Hindu, the Eastern, and Buddhism ultimately came out as Eastern vehicle. And well, I'd say to Alan, thank you, but in reality, it's both. So we'll explain that to you as an artifact. The artifact is something that is made like a potter's wheel, right? And comes out of it. Whereas a drama is basically God as everything and everyone. And in the way he explains it is, imagine that you had a choice of, that you're like bored. You can do everything, you know everything. It's like, hey, I want to have some fun. So I want you to think of that. Everything is God. So everything is, and it is this super consciousness experiencing life. And as he or she or it or exists, it goes deeper and deeper, and it says to a point like, hey, this is easy, I made this is easy, I made this. Let's have the ultimate experience. Let's just not even know that I am who I am. And and the whole point of the event is to kind of awaken to the reality of who I am. So can I put myself so much into this drama, right, like a good actor, that if you watch a good actor on stage, they forget that they're an actor and they're actually as that part, okay? In the Hindu religion, a sadhu is one at the end of their life that goes off into the forest and recognizes who they are and what they are, and ultimately becomes, awoke. So awoke is merely one who understands that it awakens from the drama. An artifact model is, we are created by this thing. We're separate, and we're they use the word the potter. Now, Alan Watts also talks about the idea of a blind person and who's always been blind, right? Trying to explain what color is to them, and using an example of heat or temperature, right? The degrees of temperature is color. Imagining that you can see in these degrees of temperature. And what I want to propose to you is that ultimately what we think of as the superconsciousness, as the do, is just another color. And for us to really be able to grasp it is kind of like a blind person trying to grasp a color, right? It's another dimensional level of thinking that as a human, as a person living in this, right, we can't grasp. Now, we see entanglement, and this goes to the whole thing is do. Do isn't an artifact. Do isn't a drama. Do, distributive unconsciousness, is the super consciousness or unconscious super unconsciousness that is merely a network of entangled stuff. Everything is tied together in this massive entanglement. And instead of thinking of it's a choice of being, this idea of a drama state, it's inherent in this drama state. And the idea that it's an artifact, that everything stemmed and was created out of this event, not consciously, just innately. There is no idea of our level of consciousness, because our level of consciousness, in a way, is lesser. It's kind of thinking of, right? Think of consciousness like this. Think of consciousness as a grain of sand, right? Trying to explain a beach by a grain of sand, right? That's what we try to do when we say God is conscious. We're trying to say, and consciousness is a grain of sand. We're trying to explain what we label as God, right? Dew is the coloring of the dew creates religion. The lack of coloring of the dew is what atheism is. An atheist just says, I don't want to color, and gets very upset at coloring. So ultimately, when you think of the dew, think of a person who can only grasp a grain of sand living in a beach, right? Living on and picking up a fistful of sand. And you're trying to grasp this fistful of sand from a point of view that you can only know the grain, right? One grain of sand. And just the idea, I guess this is where you go into faith grounded in science, because for example, entanglement exists, and we don't understand how entanglement, we know what entanglement is, but we don't know how entanglement was derived, right? We don't know the origin of entanglement. I'll tell you what the origin of entanglement was. The origin of entanglement was the supersymmetry event that occurred. And ultimately, when we existed in our unstate, right, as one thing, ultimately we were one thing. We were in the state of dew. And we're still in a state of dew, but in a way, kind of like, imagine if we didn't know what ice is, and all we are is metal, right? A metal or solid. In a state of dew, we were liquid, and we don't know what liquid is. Liquid doesn't exist in our dimension, right? In our framework. All there is solid. Trying to grasp liquid, fluid, solid, would be a very hard concept for us to understand. So, trying to explain the dew with a vocabulary that we don't have to explain it, using Alan Watts, talk about his drama, existence as a drama, or existence as an artifact. And I would say to Alan, merge the two together into this new thing, and think of this new thing as a person of who is naturally blind, trying to grasp color. That is that's the dew. And using science, right, we can intellectually kind of grasp and understand supersymmetry, but we cannot know how or why it works, right? We know what it is. Things are entangled. When one moves, the other moves. It's what quantum computing is based on. It's what all these different things are based on. But ultimately, we can't really know it. But we can observe it. And what we're observing really is that grain of sand. That supersymmetry is the grain of sand. And it is that thing that unites and entangles all of us together. That grain of sand. I doubt it. Hope you enjoyed this talk. Listen to Alan Watts. you know, Alan to me was like 90% there, but as I listened to him, you know, he was so hung up in explaining the do using religion. And the problem is religion didn't have the vocabulary of entanglement, didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. So they were left with using examples. Like he used an example of what do isn't. Do isn't consciousness, right? Our idea of a conscious God as an artifact to create a creator isn't the do, right? To try to speak or describe the do isn't the eternal do, right? That's taken from Taoism, because we lack the vocabulary to explain the do, just as a blind person, you know, lacks the vocabulary to explain color. There's really no difference. So, undoubtedly. Oh.